afternoon. It's Wednesday, the 1st of March. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News broadcasting live from Jerusalem. The sound of heavy construction equipment broke the eerie silence in the settlement of Ofra this morning as the court-ordered demolition of 9 homes in the middle of the settlement went ahead. Residents, mute with shock, watched their neighbors' homes come tumbling down. Towards noon, police succeeded in clearing the rooftop of one of the condemned houses where youth had remained overnight to protest the evacuation. The court-ordered demolition came after an appeal from the residents to seal their homes rather than demolish them was rejected. Aside from the cracking of concrete as the houses fell, the only other sound was the singing of a group of teenage residents as they sang religious and nationalist songs just outside the police barricades. IBA's Sam Sokol spent the morning in Ofra and spoke with frustrated residents less than 24 hours after they were evacuated from their homes. Despite their bitterness, they seemed optimistic over the prospect of settlement expansion in the future.
This is my house, or what's left of it. Our feeling is that this appeal to the Supreme Court against the building of this house was done not in order to protect the human rights of anyone claiming to the ownership of this property, but to expel us from living here. So we're going to keep on living here. We're going to build another house here in Ofra. As hard as it may be today, it's our mission to keep it going. It's our obligation to have a proper house for our children. So we're going to do whatever needs to be done. But build another house. The current situation, demolition of these houses, is being done according to a court ruling 2 years ago. Meanwhile, many things and many bills have been, or many actions have been taken by the government in order to try to expand the building in Judea and Samaria and keep our life going here. Do I have any expectations of the Trump administration? I have expectations. What I want from the Trump administration to respect the will of the Jewish people and support it. Let us be an example for the nations around us about how we're able to hurt together and see our house being torn down, but how we can keep united as a population and care about each other.
I'm optimistic that after this terrible ordeal that we are going through in the past month with the demolishing of Amona, the uprooting of a whole Jewish community, with the destruction of the 9 houses, senseless destruction, I truly believe that we are starting a new phase, a new period in the Jewish communities, the history of the Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria.
3 of the 4 military defense attorneys representing IDF soldier Elor Azaria resigned today, saying they will no longer work on the case. The lawyers Eyal Besser-Glick, Ilan Katz, and Kamit Schreiber said that while they are convinced Azaria's sentencing is a mistake and not in keeping with the evidence, they believe there is not much more they can do from a legal standpoint. The defense team said they will not take part in the appeal and recommended that Azaria's family seek other avenues to benefit their son, but they said they will gladly assist them with the other alternatives. Azaria is now represented solely by attorney Yoram Sheftel, who submitted the appeal earlier today. Sheftel is scheduled to convene a press conference later this evening, explaining his reasoning for filing the appeal. Following a nearly year-long trial that divided Israeli society, Azaria, who was convicted of manslaughter, was sentenced earlier this month to 18 months in prison for killing a neutralized terrorist in Hebron last March. Responding to the State Comptroller's report last night, Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Gadi Eisenkot said that while the Army is not immune to criticism, lessons have been learned and work plans formed to improve the operational capabilities of the front. IBA's Margot Dudkevich has more in this report.
Any mistakes made by the leadership during the Gaza campaign should not detract from the accomplishments and sacrifices of the soldiers, commanders and leaders involved in Operation Protective Edge, Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Gadi Eisenkot said. These are incredible people who dedicate their lives to the security of Israel and contribute towards a better future for the country and its people. The report found the army was unprepared to deal with the Hamas tunnel threat. State Controller Joseph Shapiro wrote in his report that even after Prime Minister Netanyahu, then Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon, and Chief of Staff Benny Gantz were aware of the level of threat the tunnels posed, they failed to properly prioritize the threat and provide members of the Security Cabinet with comprehensive details. Shapiro emphasized that by the time the tunnel threat was treated more seriously, too little was done too late. The report also revealed that the then head of IDF intelligence, Aviv Kochavi, and Shin Bet head Yoram Cohen failed to inform the Security Cabinet of concrete plans to counter the enemy activity, noting that intelligence gaps existed in the gathering of information on the Gaza Strip and the tunnel threat specifically. While this can occur, it is the responsibility of military intelligence and the Shin Bet, as well as the Chief of Staff and Defense Minister, to inform the Security Cabinet of the shortcomings. The report also revealed ego battles and arguments over authority between the military intelligence and Shin Bet at the time. Shapiro also emphasized that within the army, insufficient resources and attention were allocated to cope with the tunnel threat, which resulted in soldiers at the front having to come up with ad hoc solutions to destroy them. During the war, the army discovered 32 cross-border attack tunnels, but destroyed only about half of the tunnels, Shapiro noted, adding, the IDF therefore failed to complete its mission. In the past 2.5 years, billions of shekels have been invested in detection technology and tunnel warfare training for soldiers. Barriers are being erected along the Gaza border with the latest technology. Despite this, officials noted that while the situation has improved, Hamas attack tunnels still exist, and an optimal solution to the tunnel threat has yet to be found. Margot Dudkevich, IBA News.
The political echelon was less accepting of the state comptroller's report, with many current and former ministers continuing to shrug off responsibility. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu struck back at the comptroller for asserting that the tunnel threat was not properly explained to the cabinet. Netanyahu insisted that the threat was presented in detail during 13 separate meetings. Netanyahu said that despite the report's scathing findings, the military delivered a serious blow to Hamas during the 50-day operation. 1,000 terrorists were killed and thousands of rockets were destroyed, adding that the army successfully prevented Hamas's plans to infiltrate through tunnels. Netanyahu went on to say that the current calm which prevails in the south in Israeli areas surrounding Gaza is unprecedented and hasn't been this way since the Six-Day War. Former Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon, who was also highly criticized in the report, responded by saying that you don't have to be a genius to realize that the report has clearly turned into a political one. In other news, it's been cleared for publication today that the Shin Bet security service arrested an Israeli citizen who planned to travel to Syria and join the Islamic State. 40-year-old Valentin Vladimir Mazlevsky, a father of 5 from the Arab town of Shibli, was arrested on February 7th after the Shin Bet obtained intelligence of his travel plans. Mazlevsky made Aliyah to Israel in 1996 from Belarus and converted to Islam 4 years later during his army service. Security officials said he had already purchased a one-way plane ticket to Turkey and planned to cross the border into Syria. Security forces arrested 12 Palestinian terror suspects in overnight raids across the West Bank. IDF police and Shin Bet operatives participated in the arrests that took place in Betunia, Bethlehem, the Dahesha camp, Ramallah, Abu Dis, and Dura. Some of those arrested are affiliated with Hamas and are suspected of being involved in clashes with security forces as well as terrorist activities. All 12 Palestinian suspects were handed over to the Shin Bet for questioning. U.S. President Donald Trump condemned the recent spate of anti-Semitic acts that has swept his nation. In his first address to a joint session of Congress, Trump lashed out against all forms of hatred, said he will take strong measures to fight ISIS, and reaffirmed what he called the unbreakable alliance with Israel.
Recent threats targeting Jewish community centers and vandalism of Jewish cemeteries, as well as last week's shooting in Kansas City, remind us that while we may be a nation divided on policies, we are a country that stands united in condemning hate and evil in all of its very ugly forms. As promised, I directed the Department of Defense to develop a plan to demolish and destroy ISIS, a network of lawless savages that have slaughtered Muslims and Christians and men and women and children of all faiths and all beliefs. We will work with our allies, including our friends and allies in the Muslim world, to extinguish this vile enemy from our planet. I have also imposed new sanctions on entities and individuals who support Iran's ballistic missile program and reaffirmed our unbreakable alliance with the State of Israel.
Meanwhile, the Anti-Defamation League has expressed astonishment at alleged comments that Trump reportedly made during a closed meeting of state law enforcement officials yesterday. According to one of the meeting's participants, Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro, the president said that while the recent wave of bomb threats against Jewish community centers is reprehensible, he wouldn't be surprised to find out that the threats were part of a political attempt to make him look bad. Earlier this month, Trump made similar remarks at a news conference. When he was asked about acts of discrimination, he said some incidents were orchestrated by his opponents in order to portray him in a negative light. A White House spokesperson who said she was not part of Tuesday's meeting stressed that the president has always condemned anti-Semitic acts. Meanwhile, the Washington administration is considering revoking its membership from the United Nations Human Rights Council because of its bias towards Israel. Aaron Barkley, the U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, asked the Council today if focusing on Israel is a sensible priority at a time when Syria's President Bashar Assad government bombs hospitals in North Korea and Iran continue to deny their people freedom of religion and expression. The U.S. is currently an elected member of the 47-state Geneva-based council.
The obsession with Israel through Agenda Item 7 is the largest threat to this council's credibility. It limits the good we can accomplish by making a mockery of this council. The United States will oppose any effort to delegitimize or isolate Israel, not just in the HRC, but wherever it occurs. When it comes to human rights, no country should be free from scrutiny, but neither should any democratic country be regularly subjected to unfair, unbalanced, and unfounded bias.
Legendary head of the Jewish agency, Natan Sharansky, has agreed to extend his term as chairman for another year. Members of the Board of Governors requested he remain in office, despite stating his intention to step down in June. Sharansky said one of the key factors in his decision to stay was to create an egalitarian plaza at the Jerusalem's Western Wall, which he called extremely important. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu welcomed the move and reiterated his support for Sharansky as head of the organization. Minister of Culture and Sports Miri Regev yesterday announced her expanded budget for 2017, a whopping 598 million shekels, all dedicated to sports. Regev said that while it is not easy to create revolutions, the new budget is designed to promote excellence and encourage greater achievements among Israeli athletes and sportsmen. Looking forward to the 2020 Olympic Games, Regev said 10 million shekels of the budget will be divided among 5 categories of sports that have already a proven record: judo, sailing, athletics, swimming, and gymnastics. Those competing in the Paralympic Games will receive an additional 2.4 million shekels. Some of the funding will also go towards boosting women's sports, which is considered one of the ministry's priorities, and some 26 million shekels will be invested in establishing a special police unit to deal with violence at football stadiums. In other sports news, Israeli tennis player Shachar Per has announced her professional retirement from the sport. In her official announcement, the soon-to-be 30-year-old tennis sensation cited a chronic shoulder injury, which she said prevents her from playing at the level she is used to. Per, who started playing tennis at the age of 6, quickly turned into one of Israel's most promising players. In January of 2011, she was world-ranked number 11, having won 5 singles titles in 12 years on the WTA and becoming the most successful Israeli woman to play on the tour. Throughout her career, she won 6 international tournaments, reached the quarterfinals of Grand Slams in Australia and the United States, and represented Israel twice at the Olympics. Putting aside political and cultural differences, Israeli and Arab residents of Jerusalem participated in a backgammon or sheshbesh tournament this week. Cigarette smoke hung heavily in the air, with beer and energy drinks consumed to the sounds of Arab dabka music in the background. 50 players turned up for Monday's competition. Hunched over tables, they threw dice and clicked the counters as they faced off against each other. 2 Jewish and 2 Arab residents reached the semifinals in hard-fought matches that eventually saw an all-Jewish final.
Jerusalem, it doesn't belong to any of us, Jewish or Arab or whoever you are. We all belong to Jerusalem. And I think that's the big message of tonight, is we all belong to Jerusalem, and we all, we can all play and not take each other so seriously for a second and just give into the game and let the rest, let humanity do the rest.
Normally, we come across Arabs only when there's services or in a different interaction. And now it's just an option to have fun and a pleasant atmosphere with music and outside in the culture of Jerusalem. And it's a real honor that peace can be made in a different way.
In local money matters, shares were up on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange while the shekel strengthened in foreign currency trading. Here are the numbers. Turning to the weather, and the southern city of Eilat was battered with hail and heavy rain early this morning, prompting the closure of the airport there. The IDF naval base in Eilat was also flooded by water and runoff from the surrounding mountains. By midday, the airport resumed normal operations after a total of 12 millimeters of rain were said to have dropped on the resort city. As for the rest of the country, scattered rain showers are expected to continue throughout the night and tomorrow from north to south, with a slight drop in temperatures. Here's a look at the highs and lows for the next 24 hours at home and abroad. And that's all for this newscast. Join us again tomorrow, same time, same channel, when Yael Shir will be at this desk. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.